Every startup leadership hire falls into one of 4 categories. Subtractors drain energy. Adders get the job done. Dividers create silos, but only multipliers drive impact and growth. If you're not hiring for impact, you're playing startup hiring roulette. Want to find out who's on your team? Take the multiplier scorecard.
Imagine having access to a tribe of mentors. Leaders that you might have never heard of, but in just an hour, you'll know their unfiltered career story. The bets they took, decisions they made, and the lessons that they learned along the way.
Welcome to the What Makes You Tick podcast.
Jen, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Meredith, for introducing us to the wonderful Jen.
Thank you for having me. And again, thank you to Meredith.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. And Rich, welcome. Lovely to see you again.
Oh, thank you so much, Tolu. It's a pleasure. I'm really excited about having Jen on because I think Jen's had a really interesting career and is more on the account management side, which I think we've not done a huge amount of podcasts focused around what is probably the most important part of the revenue machine, because most of the revenue of a business lives in existing accounts, and it's the biggest and easiest. I say easiest with a bit of a caveat around it, but it's much easier to keep and grow an account than it is to go and do net new. But I think a lot of people underplay how difficult it is and the work of a great account management team and the link between CS and new business and marketing and product and what that really takes. So I think getting Jen's perspective is going to be a really interesting topic of conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. We've also not had many people on that love visualization, just like I do. So, Jen is ex-Tableau, so big shout outs for that.
Yep. I love it. Data fan at heart, for sure.
Absolutely. So, Jen, what makes you tick?
It's the Olympics. So there's a lot of really great, amazing accomplishments that are happening around the world, specifically in Italy. What makes me tick is accomplishing and conquering big goals, not just the little ones, not the micro goals, but the big goals. And that's really, honestly, because I've been watching the Olympics and seeing these, people race or compete for just minutes at a time, but knowing they've been training for decades, I'm just so inspired by that.
I love that. What's one of the first big goals that you remember conquering?
Well, there's one as a child I think it's interesting to talk about, and there's one as a professional. So I swam. I was an athlete, and I still swim. I think it's a lifelong sport. And I had really, really been trying to break into the Junior Olympics and get this really tough time as a 13-year-old. And I did. I got to it. It was amazing. And then knowing how competitive Colorado is, I live in Denver, there just weren't enough spots for me to compete. But I made the time, and I actually kept that time and kept beating it until I was about 17, and then I couldn't beat it anymore. But that was maybe, one of those goals as a child, and then as a professional, as a working person, when I finally, and I say finally not to be dramatic, but when I finally arrived to leadership, that was honestly such a memorable moment because I had tried interviewing and going for that role 3 times and got it on the 3rd.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So
I didn't give up.
We would love to hear your journey from kind of how you got into sales into that. How did you get into leadership and where are you now?
The journey started very young. My dad is in sales. And I think that's actually a decently common story of having a parent or a close family member be in the sales world because, it's not something you can go study in college. I think sales degrees are starting to come out more and more. But I think sales is such an interesting world because it's a fusion of a lot of different things. Traditionally, it could be finance, maybe even engineering, marketing. It's a lot of different, we'll call it disciplines wrapped into one. And so seeing my dad and how he was a financial manager, so he managed wealth, and what he talked about, stories he had, conferences he went to, and I just was a part of that journey by proxy. And then as I started really figuring out what sales meant, how it worked, how it was a lot of psychology and balancing the right words and numbers and all of that, it really dawned on me that it was something I was very passionate about. So I did get a business degree. I did end up luckily blending in marketing and finance. It's maybe as close as you can get to a sales degree. And then from that point forward, I just found the itch. I sold ads at the school paper. I had a territory with a Rolodex, like physical cards in a Rolodex, alphabetically organized. And I would drive to my clients and I'd pitch them on the paper and how it helped their reach and getting to students. And then the rest is history. But yeah, it's really where it started.
I have a question. So coming back to something that you said right at the start, I found fascinating, which is you qualified with the time, but didn't make the team.
Yeah.
And like, that's incredible because I can only imagine what that was like to go through. But and you've come away with this very wonderful story around it that's positive because you don't see it as a failure. And then you proudly talk about having to go for an opportunity 3 times to get it. So it seems like adversity has become something that you framed in your mind as part of your story. And I just wonder, what was it like going through that rejection or lack of acceptance to reach the point where you've now turned it into fuel that drives you?
I'm so glad you asked because over time, I think it's just become a part of my mental toughness that it's almost felt like second nature, but it definitely did not feel like second nature. As a child, I mean, it's hard because you're emotionally regulating, going through so much. It's like as a kid, you go through so many big moments and they become bigger and your world becomes more complicated. And then, I'm very lucky to have 2 siblings and a great network and really supportive parents who helped during that era of my life. And then as you become more independent and you have to find that adversity on your own, I think it was just a matter of being very practical and laying out the facts. And I'm a big pro-con person, weighing the trade-offs. There's pros and cons to quite literally every decision you make in life. And as I was and still continue to feel that feeling of rejection constantly, and we're always getting told no, I think that I want to learn what can I take away? And so if I get told no, I just think about, especially as being in account management, we get told no a lot. It's okay, how could I say it differently? Or did I not explain the full story? Or you just have to dissect and really reflect on how you get through the next big life event or customer call or whatever it might be and try and get to that yes. But I think rejection is a wonderful thing. It humbles us, teaches us we're not amazing all the time. It's like if you can actually honor it and learn from it, I actually think it can be pretty powerful.
I love that. It's like locus of control, right? How much do you take? Like the world is something that you can control versus you can't, and what do you take control over, and what do you take accountability for, and what do you just let pass? And I wonder if you think about your role as a leader, and leader of leaders within a great business like PandaDoc, how often is as part of what you focus on in terms of leadership, just that mental side, where you're helping people who are going through similar stories. Maybe they didn't have that very powerful life event happen at such a young age. Maybe they're going through some of that learning now. Talk me through how you approach that with your team to help them to bring out the toughness that might not immediately come out as a reaction before you help them choose their response.
It is so tough because if we have people on our team that hadn't had that, we'll call it wealth, like you said, this depth of adversity, it is honestly, it's probably one of the toughest things to coach to because so much of it is learned and so much of it has to be felt. But it's like a very personal type of skill that we all have to figure out at some point. There's 2 things that we try and do, at least more a painted doc, but what I've done throughout my career is I do a lot of storytelling, and not to point the spotlight back at me and only focus on me, but to share and be really vulnerable and candid about loss or, failure or whatever you might want to call it. So there's a storytelling element. And then secondly, we do try and really frame everything, especially at Panda Doc, on how to scale and how to even grow faster and how to be really honestly like fail fast. And I know that sounds like one of those terms that we all talk about a lot, but if the faster you can fail and the faster you can move on, we always talk about how that benefits you in the long run. But I was in a training actually at our SKO in Madrid a couple weeks ago, and we did talk about mental toughness is literally defined as experiencing many hardships that lead to your mental toughness. It's not just go learn this thing and be mentally tough. It's truly getting through the experiences. But if you can label that and call it out to a person who has maybe not gone through as much adversity throughout their life, it's good for them to label the feeling. It's almost like being, and I don't mean to draw this into parenting, but I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they're learning what their emotions are, and you have to label things for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it.
Big feelings over here in the Nguyen household.
And when you think back over your career, what are some of those big risks that you took that helped you to develop that mental toughness that you have?
I think one of the biggest risks I took was pivoting from an industry that I was really comfortable in. So prior to my time at Tableau, I was in this really great, and still continues to be a great industry. It's affiliate marketing. So think of affiliate marketing as you create these relationships. It's a lot of revenue share, and it's a lot of relationships with connecting brands to publishers to affiliates. And I knew it. I could just close my eyes and walk in every day, and I knew what I was doing. And then as time went on, I thought, well, this whole SaaS, this whole software industry seems really appealing. And to me, especially at Tableau, given that you can see the visualizations and you can like experience them, I wanted something more tangible. I didn't want to do security. I didn't want to do something that I couldn't actually interact with. And so that was a massive risk. And by the way, they took a risk on me, and I had not a lick of experience selling into software, but I'm so happy I pivoted when I did, because it's opened up many, many doors.
I'm wondering if there's a lesson to share there, because we speak to a lot of people who want to pivot. And I read the other day that the average age that someone pivots in their career is 39. And I literally just read that last week, and I'm in tele, so I should know that, but I didn't. Yeah. But I speak to a lot of people who feel trapped, and they go, maybe they're going, I feel too comfortable. Maybe something happens and suddenly they're forced to reconsider their options, which we obviously see a lot happening. What did you learn that you help people with when they're thinking about their own pivots, so that they can do it in a way that you actually found some success with? Because I think maybe sometimes people just need some examples of what other people did. Yeah. Like, could you sort of like went up the mountain first? Like, what's your approach to a successful pivot?
I think the successful approach is all around being able to translate your experience. And I've really tried to help lots of people go from industry to industry by taking a job description and breaking it down one by one and coming up with a specific example of, okay, well, if I've never had a quota or a closing role, how have I closed being a teacher? And there's so many parallels you can draw between your experiences that are kind of sneaky, like things you don't think about. But then when you really draw, like, you have to surface the most deliberate, obvious examples, because hiring managers are not thinking of that. So you have to be very, like I said, deliberate. I think the other thing too is, as you're imagining life in a different industry, play the part for a couple weeks and just see how it feels. Because sometimes you could think it's like this fantasy. I mean, you've never done it, so it's completely experiential, like completely in the dark. But if you are enjoying the podcast, the LinkedIn post, the maybe trying to watch a couple sales kickoff speeches if those are public, just immerse yourself in that industry and see if it's something you want to do. Because pivots can feel really wonderful if you are at first glance, but it's really tough because until you get hired, and hopefully you get hired, of course, it's tough to know if it's really what you want to do.
I wanted to ask you, What was one of the first big wins that you can remember when you made that pivot? So, for example, I spent a couple of years in sales, and one thing that's like burned in my head was when I made my first cold call that I booked a meeting from. Like, for me, that was a huge moment. So what was a big moment for you when you'd made that pivot where you felt like, oh, I can actually do this?
My first big moment is so crystal clear to me, specifically at Tableau. When I joined that team, I'd had account management experience. I had the experience. It was just, I would call it a different flavor. And Tableau is a much more technical sale than selling what I was doing previous, which was equivalent to selling advertising. And I remember doing my first demo by myself without a solutions engineer. And I just thought it was the coolest moment because I never dared to dream to do a demo of a really cool technology by myself. And it was awesome. And I remember, I will never forget, I was talking to one of the technical leads at a big hedge fund company. And he was like, you don't have anybody else here? Like, were you doing it? I think he thought I had recorded something and was doing a voiceover. And I proved it to him. I ended up building something. And I was like, I promise and that was really the sell of Tableau. Tableau is so smart in this way of anybody can build a dashboard. And that truly was and continues to be their mission. So I had to really prove it. And I'm married to an engineer. So it was nice where he had helped me pour through documentation, and we'd do like some self-study, at my house, just trying to figure out how I could master this demo. That was very hard, but ended up being wonderful.
Oh. Well, I think that's one of those other things is that when you're transitioning, it's good to have like a bit of a goal of, this is something that I'm targeting, that I want to be able to do this in my new world. I think that also really helps you to focus in on, okay, there's so much going on, but I know that if I can just do this one thing, then that's going to make a massive difference for me to feeling like I belong here.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. It's overwhelming. I think the minute you join a new industry or even just pivot to a new company, wherever it might be, you feel just like low in so many aspects. Low in your knowledge of the product, low in your knowledge of how the company works. And it's a slow build, but I think you're totally right, Tulu. Give yourself like a really, I don't want to say super achievable, but something you can do. And that will make you feel 10 times better as you go through your journey.
Is there a reason that you chose account management? Like, how did you end up in that lane?
I just love complexity. And I'm not saying new business isn't complex. It is so complex to acquire new logos. The complexity behind account management, in my opinion, is around having customers having them tick, like getting them in a good, healthy spot. Because until that is achieved, there's no way on earth you can ask them for more money. There's just no way. So getting customers to a really healthy spot is extremely complex. And then if you think about the other side of that, on when customers are in a spot where they're contemplating something, you just jump in there with a really strong opinion and point of view. And I tend to be a very opinionated person. So this ends up being a very great place to be if you're opinionated.
What's one thing that people get wrong about account management, Jen?
I'm sorry to say this. One thing you mentioned in the intro, it feel easy. You knew that was maybe going to come 360. Is in that, and all joking aside, I think there is a perception of, they're already paying. We're just collecting checks. It's so wonderful. We're just, kicking it, waiting for them to call us and put in more orders. And some of our customers, and this is across any company, everywhere, some really are run rate. They don't really want to talk to you. Yeah. They'll let you know. They kind of come in when they're ready. But I think it's the perception of it being a very laid back job is completely untrue in so many ways. The way that I'll frame this, especially when we're hiring or I'm explaining what I do to friends or neighbors, whoever, as I say, I'm in a consulting job with a flavor of sales. It is a heavy, heavy consulting job. And then occasionally we ask for money.
We had a really interesting guest on the podcast the other day called Campbell Williams, who's a CMO and COO for businesses. And he said a line about how when he's been the buyer of technology, And he's like, someone introduces, this is my account manager. And he's like, yeah. Don't tell me who my account manager is. I know they're just going to sell to me. Tell me who's my service manager. And I wonder how you see that perception that clients might have when they get introduced to their account manager, when they become onboarded as a customer. And the client in their own mind might have some false expectations or prejudice.
I have really come to believe that being an account manager is more of an advisor role. And I've even taken it so far to where I've only with a couple larger accounts, I've insisted on saying you're their advisor. And I totally agree on the whole, account manager, I'll just let you know, I just don't sell to me. I don't want to be sold to. And I help really my teams and I help everybody in this space just really believe they are advisors and come to the terms of there's so much to navigate internally that we really are the spokesperson for these accounts. So let's just say they have redundant support tickets and we notice patterns and we see signals and we see all of this very important information that's coming to us that we'll start to notice that when they really need help or if they need just some better direction. So I do think if the account managers can reframe a bit and come in as an advisor, that I think really helps. And I do also, this might be a bit controversial, but often I've had teams explain actually how they're paid. I think it's a really interesting thing to share, depending on your level of trust, depending on where the relationship with the customer is like, listen, my success is when you grow. And when you grow, and that will be a good thing, I will hit my goals. If you don't grow, I won't hit my goals. But I am never going to ask you unnaturally to invest unless I think it's the right time. That's always an interesting move.
Was there something that you got wrong on your journey through account management?
Yes, for sure. Because I think so many customers or just so many, like to your point around the buying experience is really intense because somebody's job is quite literally on the line based on how the decision goes. If it's positive, great. That could be a promotion path for that individual who bought that Panadoc, Tableau, whatever. Let's just say the implementation fails and they sink $50K and they're totally on the line. They could quite literally lose their job over some of these decisions. And I got it totally wrong in the beginning of my career. I hadn't really seen that. And I just was very loosely, getting upset with people that were deciding no. And then I realized them saying yes has more of an impact than just signing off on a contract. And so I started seeing the depth of their decisions.
I wonder how you deal with that. Sorry. I was going to ask how you deal with that as a leader, right? Because I remember being in all different types of environments where you had like leaders that made it really safe and they tackled problems with the system rather than making you feel small. I've also been in situations where any client loss, you're in a board meeting doing a post-mortem and it's like you shouldn't have lost this account even though it was probably terrible business and we shouldn't have had it in the first place, and we were spending a lot of energy on the wrong business without the right ICP. And I wonder how you deal with that with your team when maybe you don't get the outcome that you wanted with a customer, but you know that ultimately you need that person to be ready to step into that next meeting or that next relationship and get the outcome. What's your approach?
I think it's all around, I think it's all around empowerment. When you think about, there's so many both micro and large decisions that are being made every day that impact truly the success of how we all just walk through the world, just beyond account management. But I think about again, even back to what we were talking about in the beginning about around adversity, we are going to lose accounts. We will have churns, we will have losses. It's just a known fact. And so you think about what can you learn, what can you potentially not repeat? That's where I focus the energy. So I like to think, and hopefully if you were to ask anybody at Panadoc and the account management team, I really do try my absolute best to create a safe space where it's not the boiler room, where it's not, making people look like they're absolute failures, because when a customer churns, they've likely made that decision without even talking to you. They're in their own meetings. They're doing a lot of independent research on how to continue or discontinue a partnership. And so when we get that news, it's almost, depending on the relationship, it could be a little too late. And so then we go into save mode. And then if we end up losing, we do, of course, retrospectives. But I think that the more we can empower people to make decisions and have them really feel like they know what to do in any type of climate, and then they'll bring in leadership when things start to really potentially get sour, fall off the rails. But as long as people feel like they know how to handle these situations, and that, of course, the success of their number and their quota will take a hit, and we'll all take a hit from a financial standpoint. But again, going back to the lessons learned, if we can learn and not make that the pattern and make the growth the pattern, then I think we're all in a good spot.
Yeah, amazing. I saw a LinkedIn post that you did where you talked about, one trip around the sun, one incredible year you've had with PandaDoc, this amazing picture of people like having an incredible buzzing culture. What's one of your favorite stories from the last year that you've achieved as a team?
One of my favorite stories, this is very full circle, so I'm glad you're asking this question. When I broke, I really think it was more like a break into Tableau, because I don't think they hired a lot of people like myself coming from affiliate marketing. When I was referred into Tableau, one of my very close friends now, and her name is Jill Wickland, she was my referral. And she sat me down at Starbucks. She helped me with my demo, getting ready for the interview. I was texting her, calling her, getting really prepped, because when somebody refers you into a company, it's almost as if they become your buddy. It's like they're a pseudo recruiter, like they're really helping you behind the scenes and doing some of that shadow work. And I got the job at Tableau. We worked together for many years. She completely crushed it, rose through the ranks. This is a twofold. This is a bit of a long answer, but I promise it'll come back to me.
Sure.
We both had children around the same time, our first kids. And the policy at Tableau was not great. I don't remember the exact specifics, but I think it was about 70% pay, however many months, things like that. And Jill and I were like, we are achievers. Like, this is BS. I don't want to get 70% when I'm on leave. I have attained at 120%. So I'm getting a pay cut. So we raised a lot of concerns. And unfortunately, by the time Jill got back, this didn't apply to her. But by the time I went on my leave, the company had decided they wanted to achieve 100% on target earning for people that went on leave of absence. So independent, it could be any type of leave. But Jill and I and myself and a woman named Terry, we had really rallied and put together lots of business cases and pitched this around the company. And to achieve going from 70% OT to 100% for people on leave was massive. So that was Jill and I. That was like Jill and I's big accomplishment at Tableau. Then at PandaDoc, Jill ended up becoming an independent teacher and consultant and leadership coach. And we were looking for a leadership coach and a program to help train our leaders. And the light bulb went off, and I recommended Jill, and she ended up getting hired and coming on and being our leadership facilitator for PandaDoc. And when we were in Madrid a couple weeks ago, and we were at SKO, and she was there and I was there, and it just felt like this really euphoric moment to know that somebody who had been a big part of my life joined me in the PandaDoc world and then teach all the leaders how to be better coaches. To me, that was, it's like an out of body experience. I was so happy. I made me very happy about it.
Yeah, I love that. I wanted to just ask you around this topic, which is around the enablement for account managers. So I did a podcast the other day. We had a CRO, CMO, and CSVP on the podcast, and we were talking about who owns growth. And one of the things that came out of that podcast is that there's a perception that sales, new business acquisition, get all of the sales training and sales enablement. Marketing really get none. And CS, if they've got a really good leader, will get some, but it's not like the same type of focus and structure from the business and a desire to enable people than they do on the acquisition team. I wonder what your approach is to enablement with your team, when actually the norm is they might get a bit left on the wayside by the business.
Well, first of all, shame on anybody who's putting account management in the wayside. No, all joking aside, I do believe that the skill sets are different. So, of course, that is imperative to understand when you're building an enablement plan. And I think about how much parity there are in roles where it makes sense to essentially train the exact same topics with the exact same cadence. What I mean by that is account management is a sales job through and through. And so you can't really dismiss that fact. But when you think about account managers and what tools they need to continue to sharpen, the axe that needs to be sharpened, it's a lot around the same one-on-one basics of sales. How to set up mutual success plans, how to negotiate, how to discover. It is so eerily similar that I would argue that you could do a lot of copying and pasting or slight edits to make sure account managers stay super sharp, because the minute they get weaker in discovery or they're not as strong in negotiation, these accounts become risky, and you truly have to take a very sales driven approach. Now, what I will say is at Panadoc, we do have different tracks that we're on, although we do copy and paste and share between teams very often.
Mm-hmm. What do you wish that salespeople did before the sale that would help you after the sale?
I wish there was more mapping on accounts, meaning we can pull up org charts and start to put the pieces together all day long, but I wish there was that almost like that map of people that could help us get to some decision makers a bit quicker. Decision makers will enter and exit the scene, and if that isn't passed along to the account managers, and then we duplicatively spend a whole year trying to figure out how the org is matrixed and who reports to who and who actually makes the decisions. I mean, I think that is just such time waste. And unfortunately, something that doesn't get passed along all the time. Complicated. Organizations are very complicated. So the less guesswork we can make, the better.
Startups move so fast that if your team don't have a common language around what great looks like in hiring, you're going to get random outcomes. We give founders and their teams a shared definition of what multipliers look like. So hiring becomes strategic, not reactive. Alignment starts here.
I'm curious to ask who took a bet on you. I know that a career looks like this very linear path when you zoom out and put it on LinkedIn in this lovely storytelling format. But reality is you've taken some bets. People take bets on you. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that journey of you taking bets and people taking bets on you in your career.
There are multiple. I'll start with the first. When I first graduated, I graduated in a recession. So it was super fun, right? Like no jobs, low pay. And the first person that took a bet on me, her name is Kristen Fox. And she invited me to join this amazing company called Nguyen. It's a yoga fitness company. If you have a yoga mat, likely you've owned one of these before. And she took a bet on me because I was a recent grad, entry-level job, recession. There was just not a lot of hiring going on. And I was so grateful because she taught me the ins and outs of how to be a very disciplined worker. I also was hired as a data analyst, and that turned into a sales role. So just thinking about the bets she took on me as my entry point, and then eventually when I exited, she referred me to a company. She was so great because she knew I wanted to make more money. So that's Kristen. And then fast forward to Tableau, when I knew I wanted to make that pivot from affiliate marketing into SaaS, this amazing woman named Jennifer Fonseca took such a massive bet on me because there were so many things I was missing from a skill perspective, from an experience perspective, and she just went full throttle. And I'll never forget her and the director, Sean, sat me down for lunch and just met with me to make sure that I knew what I was signing up for. Because I don't think it was a big move. So Jennifer Fonseca was amazing. She ended up being my leader at Tableau for almost 3 years. And that was just a wonderful journey to be on. And then when the Tableau and Salesforce acquisition happened, another woman that made a bet on me, her name is Sarah Lash. And she was the then director, ended up becoming a worldwide VP at the time. And she asked me if I wanted to entertain a second line leader role. And I thought, how would I lead leaders? This is very intense. And she was she was advocating for me in a big way. And that's when I became a second line leader, was due to her sponsorship and her belief in me, which was just outstanding. And so those three women come to mind as people that took bets on me. And then as far as when I've done the inverse and when I've taken bets on people, really what I'm looking for, and this is a topic we've talked about a lot, is mental toughness and just having some of those non-negotiables. Are they hungry? Are they curious? Do they tell good stories? What are they even doing outside of work that's proving that? Because a lot of who you are as a human and in your extracurriculars does play into work as well.
I love that you're looking for behaviors, because behaviors is the missing piece. So often what we get wrong in hiring is we're indexing on competence and experience, but we're not looking at the behaviors. And it's something like 89% of mishires are due to attitudinal and cultural misalignment. That's the data. But only 15% of businesses have a defined list of behaviors that they're looking to hire. And I wonder, when you're looking at that lens of these are the behavioral things that I know add up to, across the 250 people that you've hired in your career, a great multiplier, someone that's going to come in and have a huge amount of impact in the business. How do you go about spotting those behaviors during the process that maximize your probability of being right?
I'm a creature of habit, and honestly, I ask the same questions in my interviews, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. So this might be terrible advice, but they're like these 5 super specific questions. They test for coachability, and I'm really specific on my question. I just have to know if I can coach them. I test for tenacity. I test for curiosity. I test for storytelling, and I test for how they pitch. I ask a really tough value question, and so no matter what. And I only typically have about 30 or 45 minutes with some of our folks. And depending on how these candidates and these people weave through these questions, if they're overly scripted or if I can tell they're inauthentic, it's an easy no for me. But those are the behaviors I am deeply passionate about looking for when we go through the hiring process.
I imagine if I was a leader listening to this now, I'd be like, please tell me.
What are they?
I'm struggling. I keep getting mishires. I keep getting this stuff wrong. Could you share some questions that might help some other leaders?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, this is what it's about. We have to share with each other, right? I'll tell you the one that I think is actually the biggest tell if somebody is coachable or not. So here's my question. I go, all right, Lou, tell me about a time in your career where you received some feedback and it felt a little bit like a gut punch. It really took you by surprise, and you can kind of feel that feeling of surprise. What specifically was that feedback? Who delivered it, and how did you run with that feedback? And if they're like, oh, well, and it's very mechanical, and I just think, one, they've never actually received good feedback, and that's a little bit of a detriment to them, or they just don't remember because they are terrible being coached. So that's one where I can sniff that out within literally 5 seconds if they are coachable or not.
Yeah, I love a really good question. Self-awareness, right? It's self-awareness, isn't it? Fundamentally, that sort of stuff for a high performer will stay in their head forever.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it'll almost be like a part of their fingerprint or their DNA, because if you get tough feedback, it'll last an entire career for sure. Yeah.
Amazing.
Shall we go into our take-fire questions as we close?
Sounds great.
Yeah. Jen, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay.
Or am I? I don't know. Am I ready? We'll find out.
No one's ever ready, Jen. No.
You can do it, Jen.
Sure.
Are you coachable? No, I don't.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Ask my boss. I don't know. I hope so.
That would be the very, very sort of if you tried get AI to teach you how to go and do that. It's oh, they're coachable. Yes, they said they are. Tick box, done.
All right. Oh my God. That'd be impossible.
Yeah.
So first question is, if you were to start your own podcast tomorrow, who would be your first guest, dead or alive, and why?
Amy Poehler, hands down. Such an easy question, because Amy Poehler, this could be celebrities, right? Does this have to be?
Yeah, it can be anybody. Anybody.
She's a legend. She's a shero. She's just a woman. She's a force in the industry. Comedy is a tough industry. And she is a podcaster now. And I religiously watch it. The minute it comes out, I like ignore my family. I'm like, gotta go. I need to watch the podcast. I'm so just obsessed with her, again, tenacity and breaking through a really tough industry and having successful shows and going through. And she's a boy mom. She has 2 boys. I have 2 boys. So maybe I'm a little more attracted to her for that reason. But it'd be Amy Poehler. I think we'd have a blast. And we use the same lip gloss, so there might be something to that too. Talks about that in her show too.
Amazing. Okay, in terms of AI's impact on this world, what are you most excited and most cautious about?
I'm most excited about being in the age of AI. I think it's wonderful. I think it's an extension of our brain. It's just becoming such a lovely gift if we can treat it as a gift. On the inverse, I am the most afraid of it because so much of jobs are being automated. Although I do think that's where account management in particular can outshine AI because there's such a deep human component to these relationships. And I think about, while it is a continuous fear, if you can lean on it and let it help you and guide you, it's really going to propel us and not make us live too much in fear.
When you're coaching new leaders, what's one piece of advice you always share?
I always share that it is impossible to do everything perfectly and to celebrate the small wins.
What piece of feedback that you got made the biggest impact on your thinking?
I remember getting feedback once that I had made a pretty poor decision. And then when I thought about decision making, it was my leader, Michael, at the time. And he did this little triangle analogy. He thought about, when you make decisions, there's Jen. She's a part of the decision making. There's the company, which at the time was Tableau. And then there's the customer. And there's this, you're constantly having to weave and bob between these angles of the prism. And I made a Jen decision once. And he was like, that was a Jen decision. You were missing the company and you were missing the customer. And so I just think thinking about decision making as a prism or a third of something will really, really help you feel more confident in decision making.
Really good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Which book would you choose to add to a library for our listeners?
It's right here. Of course, I always have books in front of me. The 4 Agreements. Hands down, one of the best books I've ever read. And I read it once a year. Have you all heard of this book before?
No.
Oh my gosh, y'all. This is amazing. So the 4 agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best.
Oh.
It's a bit of a metaphysical book, so that's my error of caution. It does get a little, deep into the world, but it's an easy read. I think it's about 125 pages. I give it to every leader I coach. I give it to a lot of people I mentor, and it opens your eyes and your capacity for a lot of really great things.
I already love it. I love those 4 agreements already. I'm getting that audiobook.
It's great. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And last question, what's one thought you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
Keep raising the bar. Just when you have a bar or a baseline, I should say, and you think about your job and how tactical and administrative it can get and how you have to weave and bob between tasks and admin and then being really strategic, hopefully, should you be so lucky. Just keep raising the bar and keep pushing your limits, because unless you keep raising the bar, life is pretty boring.
Absolutely. Jen, thank you so much for being on What Makes You Tick. This was a wonderful conversation. So thank you so much. And thank you, Meredith.
Thank you, Meredith. Thank you for the invitation. You both have been wonderful. I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Awesome.
Everyone else, will see you on the next episode.
Thanks so much for joining us for the What Makes You Tick podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I enjoyed having the conversation.
Yeah, there's so much value in hearing other people's career stories. And if you're someone focused on growing in your own career, check out our Growth Magnet newsletter on LinkedIn. We'll put a link in the show notes.
And we will see you on the next episode.